My name is Penny Brown, and I'm 34 years old. When people ask me what it's like to grow up inside a family business, I always say it feels like living inside a heartbeat. Every rise and fall, every success and mistake echoes through the entire family. Ours was a flower empire called Dream Flower, started by my father 15 years ago from a single rented storefront in Miami. I was 19 then, staying up late with him at the kitchen table under a flickering bulb, surrounded by coffee cups, catalogs, and the faint scent of lilies. Dad used to say, "If you know how a flower breathes, you'll know how a customer feels." Those nights were the foundation of everything I became. I learned to track suppliers, predict seasonal spikes, soothe angry clients, and balance deliveries across the city before dawn. By the time Dreamflower grew into a chain of successful shops, every inch of that business pulsed with my sweat and time. My younger sister Megan, 6 years my junior, joined later after college with a finance degree and a charming smile that disarmed everyone, especially our parents. She took over the numbers and I managed operations. It worked at first. She modernized our accounting system. I handled clients and staff. We were different, but balanced until I began to notice cracks. It started subtly. Megan's new car, a Porsche, paid in cash. Her week-long trip to the Maldives to unwind. Her designer handbags appearing one after another, each one worth more than a month's payroll. I tried to laugh it off, but the numbers started whispering their own story. Payments to unfamiliar consulting firms inflated shipping fees, vendor invoices that didn't match deliveries. Every time I brought it up, she brushed me off. "Relax, Kathy," she'd say, flicking her hair over her shoulder. "You wouldn't understand corporate accounting. Just focus on flowers." The way she said it, flowers as if it were a child's hobby, burned deeper than I wanted to admit. Then came the call. That Tuesday evening, the air felt heavy with something I couldn't name. I'd just gotten home from the shop when Mom called, her voice trembling through the receiver. "Penny, honey, can you come over? We need a family meeting." Those 3 words, family meeting, sent a cold wave through my stomach. I drove across town, every red light stretching longer than it should. When I arrived, Dad was already in his armchair, his hands clasped like he was praying. Mom sat beside him, twisting her wedding ring. Megan stood by the window, perfectly composed, like she'd rehearsed this. "Sit down, Penny," Dad said quietly. I obeyed, heart pounding. No one spoke for several seconds. The clock ticked painfully loud. Finally, Mom broke the silence. "Sweetheart, we've been reviewing the numbers. The business isn't doing well. Sales are fine, but expenses," she swallowed, eyes glassy. "We're losing money." "That can't be right," I said. "I just checked the reports last week. Sales are up. Suppliers haven't changed their prices." "That's the issue," Megan interrupted smoothly. She held a folder, cream-colored, professional-looking, her weapon of choice. "Sales don't mean anything if costs are out of control. I've prepared an analysis." She spread the papers across the coffee table like evidence at a trial. Graphs, charts, trend lines, all painted in red. According to her report, Dreamflower was bleeding cash. "These are exaggerated," I said, flipping through. "Half these suppliers don't charge that much. Look at Sunshine Consulting. What even is that?" Megan sighed dramatically, the way she used to when I helped her with homework she didn't want to do. "Penny, please. This is complicated. You handle the storefronts, but you've never understood finance. These are real numbers. We're one bad quarter away from bankruptcy." I looked at my parents, Mom crying, Dad looking older than I'd ever seen him. They believed her. Dad cleared his throat. "Your sister's been working hard to stabilize things. Maybe it's time you took a break. Let her handle it for a while." "A break?" My voice cracked. "Dad, I've run this company for 15 years. He couldn't meet my eyes. "We'll buy your shares at a fair price. You can take some time off." Megan handed over a paper with a number scribbled on it. I stared at it, barely half of what my share was worth. "This isn't fair," I whispered. Megan tilted her head, sympathy coating her words like poison. "We're trying to save the company, Kathy. Sometimes you have to accept hard truths." That was when it hit me. Not confusion, not fear. Clarity. This wasn't about bad numbers. This was about control. I stood slowly. "I'll think about it," I said evenly. "Give me a few days." Megan smiled tight, victorious. She thought she'd won. But as I turned to leave, I caught my reflection in the living room mirror behind her. For the first time, I didn't see the tired older sister trying to keep peace. I saw someone ready for war. Outside, the night air was thick and humid. I sat in my car, gripping the steering wheel, my pulse still hammering. Through the window, I could see the faint glow of our family home, the one Dad built, the one Megan would gamble with soon enough. She wanted me out of the family business. Fine. But she had no idea what she'd started. I opened my phone, typed Flower Empire job openings, and hit search. The biggest flower chain in South Florida, our fiercest competitor. If I was going to fight Megan, I needed to learn how to fight like the corporations she envied. That night, under the dim streetlight outside my parents' house, I rewrote my resume. I changed my name, trimmed my history, and built a new version of myself from scratch. Someone who didn't grow up in Dreamflower. Someone who could slip into the enemy's camp unseen. And as I hit submit on the online application, a strange calm washed over me, a clarity sharper than grief. If Megan wanted war, she was about to get one, but not the kind she expected. When I got the interview confirmation email from Flower Empire, my heart didn't race. It went perfectly still. It was the kind of silence you get before a storm when the air holds its breath. Under my new name, Penny Brown Development Manager Candidate, I was reborn. Gone was the loyal daughter of Dreamflower. In her place stood a clean slate, a woman with a resume full of fake consulting gigs and retail analysis experience that ironically wasn't fake at all, just redirected truth. Every bullet point came from my real work, rewritten under names of non-existent companies, my real expertise just hidden behind different walls. The morning of the interview, I stared at myself in the mirror, hair neatly pinned, suit perfectly pressed. I practiced my new smile. Not the warm one customers used to love, but the professional, distant kind that doesn't give anything away. For the first time in my life, I understood Megan's smile. The corporate headquarters sat downtown, all glass and chrome. The receptionist welcomed me with a polished grin. As I waited in the lobby, I caught my reflection again in the mirrored wall, unrecognizable, and I liked it. The hiring manager, Patricia, was in her late 40s, confident, sharp-eyed, the kind of woman who could spot a weak argument a mile away. She asked about market expansion, delivery optimization, customer retention. Every answer I gave came effortlessly, 15 years of running Dreamflower disguised as consulting for boutique florists across the East Coast. When she finally smiled and said, "You're exactly what we need," something inside me shifted. I had just infiltrated the enemy. It wasn't for the paycheck. I didn't care about their money. I wanted access to systems, to data, to a new way of thinking. Flower Empire was the biggest in the region. If I wanted to beat Megan, I needed to learn how the best protected themselves. The first week was overwhelming. Their office felt like another planet. Smart screens everywhere, team meetings about fraud prevention, supply chain algorithms, and brand analytics. There was no chaos, no emotion, just strategy. I began to see how vulnerable Dreamflower had been. We ran on passion. They ran on precision. Patricia took a liking to me. "You've got instincts," she said one afternoon, handing me a coffee. But instincts aren't enough in this industry. You need proof, always proof. Her words lodged deep in my mind. At night, I went home and reopened Dreamflower's records from the backup drive I'd quietly saved before Megan locked me out. I used everything Flower Empire had taught me, cross-checking vendors, searching government registries, analyzing cash flow trails. It was tedious, soul-draining work, but every new pattern felt like uncovering another layer of deceit. Coastal Logistics Solutions, Sunshine Consulting Group, Premier Floral Services. 3 companies, all vaguely legitimate sounding, with vague service descriptions. Yet the same name kept popping up in the registration logs, Amanda Chen, Megan's college roommate. I hadn't thought about Amanda in years. But suddenly I remembered nights when she'd come over during college breaks, sitting at our kitchen table while Megan whispered about big dreams, scribbling plans in a notebook, then snapping it shut when I walked in. Back then I assumed they were talking about boys. Now I realized they'd been practicing something else entirely, secrecy. Each transaction I traced told the same story. A consulting invoice paid out 3 days before Megan's vacation, a logistics payment processed the week she bought her Porsche. Coincidence. Not when it happened over and over again. Still, I didn't rush. Patricia's words echoed proof, not instincts. I started to stay late at Flower Empire, poring over fraud detection reports and internal case studies. Their investigators worked like surgeons, no emotion, only evidence. I wanted to learn to think like that. If I let anger drive me, I might make mistakes. And Megan counted on that. During those long evenings, I'd sometimes catch my reflection in the dark window glass, me framed by the glow of spreadsheets, jaw clenched, eyes hollow. I looked like her. I was becoming what I needed to beat. On one particularly late night, Patricia passed my desk and raised an eyebrow. "You're always the last one out," she said. "I like quiet," I replied. She smiled faintly. "Quiet's where you find the truth." I didn't know whether she was talking about work or something else. By the third month, I had built a complete digital trail linking Megan's shell companies to Dreamflower's accounts. I had dates, amounts, and corporate filings. I even found cross payments between the three shells, a perfect triangle of money laundering. My plan was to compile everything into a single report, present it quietly to my parents, and let the evidence speak. But one Thursday evening changed everything. I was working late again, half the office lights off, when I overheard Patricia's voice from the next room. Her door was ajar. She was on a call. "Yes, we've been tracking Dreamflower," she said. Her tone clipped. "Their CFO applied for a development loan. She's using family property as collateral." My blood ran cold. I froze, pen in hand. "If the loan clears," Patricia continued, "they'll expand 3 locations, which would increase competition. We'll monitor it, but I'd advise against partnering with them until due diligence is done." The call ended. I sat there motionless, every sound amplified, the hum of the AC, the faint clicking of a distant keyboard. Megan was risking everything our parents' house for a loan she didn't need, probably to cover her own thefts. That night I drove home in silence. Miami's lights blurred through the windshield, neon streaks melting into each other like watercolor. I parked outside my apartment, sat in the dark, and opened my laptop. On the screen glowed 3 names: Coastal Logistics Solutions, Sunshine Consulting Group, Premier Floral Services, and below them the name Amanda Chen. I started assembling everything: contracts, payments, shell addresses, registry documents, tax IDs, into one massive dossier. Every click of the mouse felt like hammering a nail into the coffin of the life I used to know. By midnight, it was all there, irrefutable. Still, before closing the file, I paused. There was a picture of me and Megan on my desk taken years ago, on the opening day of our second store. We were both laughing, covered in flower petals, arms around each other. I stared at it for a long moment. Then quietly I turned it face down. This wasn't sister against sister anymore. This was predator versus survivor. By the time dawn broke over Miami, the first draft of my dossier was complete. My apartment looked like a war room, papers everywhere, sticky notes pinned to the walls. 3 laptops running searches on corporate registries and banking records. The hum of my printer was the only sound that reminded me I was still alive. The evidence was airtight. 3 shell companies, 1 registered agent, 1 founder. All paths led back to Amanda Chen and by extension my sister Megan. Still, I wasn't satisfied. I needed more than proof of fraud. I needed to understand motive. Why risk everything? Why now? At Flower Empire, I had access to internal audit models that could reconstruct hidden financial behavior. Using those tools on Dreamflower's data, I mapped out a pattern. Every fraudulent transfer was synchronized with a personal milestone in Megan's life: new apartment, new car, vacation, jewelry. Her success had been funded 1 wire transfer at a time. The math told a cold story, but I wanted to feel it to understand it. So I drove to one of our old storefronts, the first Dreamflower branch Dad had ever opened. It was early morning before opening hours. The shutters were half closed, but the familiar scent of fresh roses drifted through. Inside, I could still picture Dad at the counter, sleeves rolled up, teaching me how to wrap bouquets so the stems wouldn't bruise. Megan had been 13 then. She'd sit on the stool by the register, spinning around and complaining that flowers were boring. "Numbers make more sense," she used to say. "At least they don't wilt." I realized then she never loved the business. She loved what it gave her. That afternoon, I returned to Flower Empire, determined to tighten the case. Patricia noticed the dark circles under my eyes. "You need sleep," she said. "I'll sleep when it's over." "When what's over?" she asked, smiling faintly. "An old mistake," I replied, and walked away before she could ask more. For the next 3 weeks, I became obsessed. Every night after work, I traced new data points, bank transfers, shell company taxes, paper filings. I found out Amanda Chen had opened the first company the same month Megan joined Dreamflower's finance department. The timeline lined up perfectly. Then came the correlation spreadsheet, my masterpiece of quiet vengeance. Every purchase Megan made, time-stamped. Every fraudulent invoice matched. Every deposit into Amanda's accounts confirmed. $10,000 consulting fee. 3 days later, Maldives resort booking. $18,000 logistics adjustment, Porsche down payment. $7,500 vendor training. Diamond necklace from Cartier. Even the flowers on her Instagram posts matched the invoice cycles. Every post was a breadcrumb she didn't know she was leaving behind. Yet amid the satisfaction of building an ironclad case, something inside me began to ache. Late one night, as rain hammered my windows, I caught myself whispering aloud, "What if she had just asked? Would I have helped her? Probably. Would Dad have forgiven her? Definitely." But Megan had chosen deceit over trust, and now I was choosing exposure over mercy. Still, the human part of me, the sister, kept fighting back. I started having dreams. Megan and I sitting in the old kitchen, laughter echoing her reaching across the table to pass me scissors, saying, "You always cut the ribbon too short." Then in the dream, her smile would twist into something cold and the scissors would vanish. I'd wake up gasping. The following morning, I almost didn't go to work. But Patricia's voice echoed in my memory, proof, not instincts. So I went back. I kept working. Then one night, a small detail changed everything. While checking a business license renewal, I found a fourth name, one that wasn't Amanda's or Megan's. It was Robert Lane, our father's middle name. For a moment, my heart stopped. But when I dug deeper, I realized what had happened. Megan had used Dad's credentials, his digital signature on at least 3 fraudulent invoices. He had unknowingly signed off on her thefts. She hadn't just stolen from the company, she had used our father as her shield. That realization broke something in me. I no longer saw this as a rivalry or even revenge. It became an act of protection. She wasn't just greedy, she was dangerous. If she was willing to risk our father's name on falsified documents, she would risk our parents' home, their savings, their peace of mind. So I began structuring the dossier like a legal brief, something that could stand up to scrutiny anywhere: bank auditors, law enforcement, or the press. Each document cross-referenced 3 independent sources. Each graph was annotated. Each timeline had footnotes. By the end of that week, it was no longer a collection of files. It was a story, a confession Megan didn't know she'd written. 4 months after I joined Flower Empire, I printed the dossier, bound it neatly, and locked it in a slim gray folder. I remember standing over it for a long time, fingers resting on the cool surface. It felt heavier than paper should. Maybe because it carried every sleepless night, every betrayal, every ounce of silence I'd swallowed for months. I didn't send it right away. I waited. Some part of me wanted to give Megan a chance to come clean, even though I knew she never would. Then, one Friday evening, everything changed again. Patricia stayed late at the office that night. I was 2 desks away when her phone rang. "Yes, this is Patricia," she said, glancing at a file on her desk. "Ah, the Dreamflower account, yes. I'm aware their CFO is applying for a new line of credit. Large one. She's using the family house as collateral." I froze. The family house. The one with the worn front steps where Dad used to sit and drink coffee. The one Mom still called our forever home. Patricia continued. "We've flagged irregularities in her prior statements, but if the loan clears, they'll have expansion capital. Could be risky." She hung up, unaware that the words had detonated a bomb in my chest. That night, I didn't even drive home. I parked outside my parents' place, engine off, watching the lights flicker inside. Mom was moving in the kitchen. Dad was watching TV. They looked so normal. They had no idea their daughter was about to mortgage their lives away for her cover-up. I knew then I couldn't wait. I went home, opened my laptop, and spent the entire night organizing everything into one final document, a clean, chronological dossier. Every invoice, every shell company, every dollar, every fraudulent signature. When the sun rose, I added one final note at the end, submitted in good faith to prevent financial loss and protect family property. Then I found out which bank was handling Megan's application and sent the dossier anonymously to their fraud division 1 hour before their loan committee meeting. No threats, no commentary, no emotion, just the truth. As the file uploaded, my reflection appeared on the laptop screen. My own face looked unfamiliar, tired, hollow-eyed but steady. I realized I had become exactly what I needed to be, cold enough to survive, clear enough to win. The email from my mother came 2 days later. "Penny dinner at home tonight. It's important. Your father and I want everyone here." I knew what that meant. The bank had called. When I pulled into the driveway, Megan's white Porsche was already there, polished to a mirror shine. Through the living room window, I saw her silhouette moving around laughing, pouring champagne into flutes. My pulse thudded like a warning drum. She didn't know yet. The rejection letter hadn't reached her inbox. The front door opened before I could knock. Mom stood there, her smile trembling. "Honey, you came." The house smelled like roasted chicken, and Lily's her attempt to make it feel like a celebration. Inside, Dad sat by the fireplace, the old armchair creaking under his weight. Megan was radiant in a red dress holding a champagne glass. "What's all this?" I asked, setting my purse down. Megan beamed. "We're celebrating. I just closed a huge deal for the company, a new expansion. Dreamflower is about to go national." I studied her carefully. She was too relaxed, too smug. "Really? That's impressive." "Don't look so shocked," she teased. "I told you I could handle the business." I didn't respond. Instead, I took my phone out of my bag and scrolled silently. "You might want to check your email, Meg." Her smile faltered. "Why?" "The bank withdrew your loan application this afternoon. Said there were inconsistencies." The room froze. Dad frowned. "Loan? What loan?" Megan's expression flickered just for a moment. Then she recovered. "It was supposed to be a surprise," she said quickly. "Just business expansion. I used the house as temporary collateral until profits rolled in." Mom gasped, hand flying to her mouth. "Our house." "Megan, what were you thinking?" "It's normal in business," Megan snapped. "You wouldn't understand." "The bank did," I interrupted softly. "They understood perfectly once they saw the evidence." Her head whipped toward me. "What did you do?" I met her eyes. "I saved our parents' home. That's what I did." Dad stood up. "Someone explain to me what's happening." I opened my laptop on the coffee table, the soft hum of the machine cutting through the silence. My hands didn't shake as I opened the folder labeled Dreamflower Fraud Confidential. "For the past 4 months, I've been working at Flower Empire," I said calmly. Mom's eyes widened. "Our competitor? Yes. I needed to learn how corporations protect themselves from internal theft." Megan scoffed. "You're unbelievable. You went to our rival, I went looking for truth," I said evenly, "and I found it." The first slide appeared on the screen, a web of 3 company logos connected by red lines: Coastal Logistics Solutions, Sunshine Consulting, and Premier Floral Services, all pointing toward a single name, Amanda Chen. "These are fake companies," I explained. "Created and managed by Amanda, your college friend. They build Dreamflower for services that never existed, consulting logistics training, while you authorized every payment." Dad leaned closer. "Amanda Chen. She's behind this." "Not behind," I said quietly. "With Megan." I clicked to the next slide, copies of invoices, payment receipts, matching Megan's personal purchases. "Here's a $20,000 consulting fee paid 3 days before her Maldives vacation, and another $18,000 for logistics adjustment paid right before she bought her Porsche." The room was dead silent except for the faint hum of the ceiling fan. Dad's voice cracked. "Megan, tell me this isn't true." She laughed weakly. "This is ridiculous. Those are legitimate business costs." "Penny doesn't understand finance." "Then explain the matching timestamps," I said, my voice cutting through hers. "Explain the tax IDs registered under Amanda's address. Explain using Dad's electronic signature for false invoices." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Mom was crying openly now, tears slipping silently down her face. Dad's knuckles whitened as he gripped the edge of the table. "I trusted you," he said hoarsely. "You told me these expenses were normal. I signed them because you said they were necessary." Megan took a step forward, eyes glistening. "Dad, please, I only did it for us, to grow the business faster." Penny was slowing everything down. We were stuck in the past. "By stealing?" I asked quietly. "By gambling the house." She turned on me, eyes blazing. "You think you're the hero, don't you? You've always hated that I'm better at this than you are. You've been waiting for me to fail." "No," I said. "I've been waiting for you to stop lying." The words hit her like a slap. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she dropped her gaze, whispering, "You ruined everything." "No," I said softly. "You did." Dad sank back into his chair, rubbing his temples. "Penny, what happens now?" I closed the laptop gently. "We fix what she broke. But to do that, she needs to step down completely. No half measures, no buyout. Megan, you'll sign over your share and walk away." "You can't force me out," she snapped. "I'm a partner. I have rights." "You're a criminal," I said, voice low but steady. "If you don't leave, I'll send this entire file to the tax authority, and I won't redact a single line." The color drained from her face. She looked to our parents for backup, but for the first time, neither of them came to her rescue. Dad's eyes were cold. Mom couldn't even look at her. That's blackmail, Megan whispered. It's justice, I replied, the kind you taught me to fight for. For a long time, no one moved. The only sound was the faint tick of the old clock on the mantel, a rhythm I'd known my whole life, now counting down the death of our partnership. Finally, Dad spoke, his voice hollow. Megan signed the papers. Her eyes filled with tears. Not remorseful ones, but furious, bitter tears. She looked at me, like she could kill me with that glare alone. Fine, she said, grabbing her purse. I'll sign. But don't expect me to thank you for destroying your own sister. She walked out, heels striking hard against the tile. The front door slammed so hard the windows rattled. Mom collapsed into her seat, covering her face. How did we not see it? Because she's good at what she does, I said softly. Lying. Dad stared into the fire. I should have listened to you, Penny. I shook my head. You trusted your daughter. That's not a mistake, Dad. That's love. She just didn't deserve it. He looked up then, eyes heavy. What happens next? We rebuild, I said. Properly this time. Transparent books, real audits, no secrets. Dreamflower will survive because now it has to. Mom reached across the table, took my hand, and whispered, We're proud of you, honey. We just wish it didn't have to come to this. I nodded, blinking back tears. Me too. But deep inside, I knew Megan's story wasn't over. The look she gave me before walking out, that cold, unwavering hatred, wasn't defeat. It was a promise. And promises like that never disappear. Megan signed the papers a week later. No lawyers, no shouting. Just a single pen stroke that felt heavier than anything else she'd ever done. She left the conference room without a word, her heels echoing down the hallway until the sound faded completely. For the first time in months, Dreamflower was silent. I took over everything, operations, finances, supplier contracts. It felt strange, like moving into a house you'd always lived in but never owned. Every document I reviewed carried traces of her, the extra notes, the coded transfers, the false optimism in her quarterly summaries. Cleaning it all out was like performing surgery on something I used to love. But as the weeks passed, the business began to breathe again. I spent long nights in the office reorganizing systems, implementing Flower Empire-style audits, rebuilding supplier trust, one handshake at a time. Within 3 months, sales rose steadily. We launched online delivery, redesigned our stores, and secured partnerships with 3 major hotels. Dad's shoulders straightened again. Mom smiled when she answered the phone. The house felt lighter. Still, sometimes I'd find her staring at the empty seat at Sunday dinner. She was always so full of life, Mom would whisper. Maybe we pushed her too hard. I never said it out loud, but the truth haunted me too. Maybe if we'd listened earlier, she wouldn't have turned into what she did. Megan moved to Jacksonville soon after. Word traveled fast. She'd found work at a floral design company there. For a while, I almost let myself hope that distance might fix her. But 6 months later, Dad came into my office with a thin envelope in his hands. It was a printed email, anonymous but clear. Your sister was terminated for embezzlement. Same pattern. Inflated supplier invoices, falsified reports. You might want to check on her. He didn't say anything as he placed it on my desk. He didn't have to. We both knew. She'll never change, I murmured. Mom still sent her money, sometimes quietly, as if guilt could bridge the distance. I found out only because I saw the transfers in their account logs. I didn't stop her. Every family needs its illusion of mercy. Then 1 year later, she came back. It was a humid afternoon in June. I arrived at my parents' house for our weekly dinner and saw a white rental car in the driveway. For a moment, my breath caught. I recognized her silhouette through the window. When I walked inside, she was sitting in the living room, eyes red, hands trembling around a cup of tea. Kathy, she whispered, voice cracking. I'm so sorry. Mom was already crying. Dad sat stiffly, saying nothing. I lost everything, she continued. My job, my apartment. I've been working as a waitress, just trying to survive. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want to make things right. Please. I don't want money or my share, just a chance to work. Anything warehouse courier, whatever you need. Let me prove I've changed. For a long time, no one spoke. Even the old clock seemed to hesitate. Mom looked at me, eyes pleading. Penny, maybe she means it this time. I studied my sister. Her hair was shorter, her makeup gone, her voice softer. On the surface, she looked humble, but there was something in her eyes, something that didn't match the words. A flicker of calculation. Fine, I said finally, to everyone's surprise. We're opening a new salon in West Palm Beach. It's underperforming. If you can make it profitable within 3 months without using any family money, you can stay on as manager. Megan's head snapped up. Really? Really, I said. But everything goes through me and an independent consultant. No shortcuts. Her relief looked genuine. Thank you, Kathy. I won't let you down. Dad exhaled softly as if he'd been holding his breath for a year. Mom smiled through tears. For the first time in a long time, hope returned to their faces. For the next 2 weeks, Megan threw herself into the project. She worked late, sent detailed plans, even brought cupcakes to staff meetings. Mom called me every night to say how proud she was. Maybe this time it's different, she said. I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. Then the consultant's report landed on my desk. It was subtle, clever even. Hidden inside Megan's proposed business plan was a line item, specialized supplier procurement, independent vendor coordination. I clicked through the documents. The vendor was a newly registered LLC in Jacksonville. Owner Amanda Chen. My stomach turned cold. I called Dad immediately. We need to meet tonight. When we gathered at the house again, I handed the consultant the plan and asked him to review it aloud. He didn't mince words. This model is financially unsound. High-risk credit exposure, inflated procurement costs, and reliance on a single unverified supplier. It's the same framework we'd flag as fraudulent in a corporate audit. Dad turned to Megan. Is this true? It's not what you think, she said quickly. Amanda was just helping me find cheaper suppliers. I didn't mean... Stop lying, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. You use the same structure. New city, same scam. Her face twisted. You never trusted me. You've turned them against me from the start. I gave you a chance, I said quietly. You failed it. She stood up, trembling. You want everything for yourself. You've always wanted that. You couldn't stand to share. Dad slammed his hand against the table, startling everyone. Enough, Megan, he shouted, his voice breaking. We've forgiven you once. We won't do it again. The silence that followed was thick and final. Megan's eyes darted around the room. Mom crying softly. Dad's face pale with anger. Me standing cold and still. Finally, she whispered, I hate all of you. Then she grabbed her purse and stormed out. The sound of the front door slamming echoed through the house like a full stop. No one chased after her this time. Mom sat down slowly, wiping her eyes. She really hasn't changed, has she? No, I said softly. She hasn't. That was the last time we saw her in person. After that, her name existed only in fragments creditors' calls, occasional desperate texts, always from new numbers. Please, I'm broke. Just a few hundred, I'll pay you back. You won't even help your own sister. Mom stopped responding eventually. Even her compassion had limits. But me, I didn't delete the messages. I kept them each one a reminder of the price of deceit. As Dreamflower grew stronger than ever, I sometimes caught myself wondering where she was, whether she still blamed me, whether she'd learned anything at all. Some nights, when I left the Brickell office after closing, I'd glance at the empty street and imagine her standing there half in shadow, watching, waiting. A ghost of blood and betrayal. It's been 3 years since Megan disappeared. Dreamflower now spans 6 stores across Miami with a thriving online service and partnerships with luxury hotels. On paper, it's a success story, one of those cheerful local business features that newspapers run on Sundays. They call me the woman who rebuilt a family legacy. I smile politely when they interview me, but I never tell them what that legacy cost. Every morning, I still arrive before everyone else. I unlock the glass doors, inhale the sweet perfume of fresh lilies, and walk through the quiet aisles where sunlight filters through the windows. It's peaceful, almost holy. But beneath that calm lies memory. Every counter, every ledger, every bouquet hides the ghost of a mistake we'll never stop paying for. Dad retired last year. His hands shake too much to sign documents now. Though sometimes he still visits the main store just to check inventory, pretending not to notice that I'm the one making sure the books are clean. Mom volunteers at a community garden. She smiles more these days, but whenever someone mentions Megan, her voice goes thin. I just hope she's eating well, she says softly, as if Megan were a lost child instead of a grown woman who burned every bridge we built. I let her hold on to that illusion. It's the only thing that keeps her from breaking completely. As for me, I've become colder, sharper, maybe too much like the sister I once tried to save. I monitor every account myself, double-check every supplier. My staff call me meticulous. What they don't realize is that I'm terrified of missing something. I've seen how small cracks become sinkholes. Sometimes late at night, when everyone's gone, I sit in my office, the new one in Brickell, with glass walls and city lights spilling in like restless fire. I opened my old folders, invoices, bank records, the dossier that started everything. I don't do it out of pride. I do it to remember, to remind myself what happens when trust turns into blindness. The thing about revenge is that it doesn't end when you win. It lingers. It settles into your bones and waits for silence to return so it can whisper. Was it worth it? I think about that night off in the confrontation, the look in Megan's eyes as she left. She hated me, yes, but beneath that hatred, there was something else: grief. A wordless understanding that we had destroyed something that could never be rebuilt. Some nights I wake from dreams where we're back at the kitchen table, Dad half asleep with coffee, Megan doodling flowers on invoices, laughing. I try to hold on to that image, but it always fades, replaced by the memory of her signature on forged documents. I tell myself she was beyond saving, that what I did, going undercover, exposing her, ruining her schemes, was necessary, maybe even noble. But when I see my reflection in the glass, sometimes I catch a flicker of her, my own eyes calculating distant. And I wonder if betrayal runs in blood, or if it's something we learn from the people we love most. 2 months ago, something strange happened. A package arrived at Dreamflower headquarters, no return address. Inside was a small box of dried lavender tied with a satin ribbon. There was no note, only a business card. Amanda Chen Bloom, and beyond. Consulting Jacksonville. For a moment, the room spun. My pulse quickened like it used to in those old nights of investigation. Amanda's company name had changed, but her handwriting on the ribbon tag was unmistakable. Was it a peace offering? A warning, a test. I set the box on my desk untouched where it still sits today. Every day I tell myself I'll throw it away, and every day I don't. Because deep down I know that stories like ours never really end, they just go quiet for a while. That night I visited my parents' house. The garden looked smaller somehow, the air quieter. Mom was pruning roses near the fence when I told her about the lavender. She froze, mid-cut, eyes wide. Do you think she sent it? I don't know. Maybe it's her way of saying sorry. Or her way of saying she's still watching, I said softly. Mom didn't reply. She just set the shears down and looked at the horizon, her expression unreadable. When I drove home that evening, the city lights flickered through the windshield like ghosts, familiar, unforgiving. I realized something then: revenge doesn't end with justice. It ends with vigilance. The moment you stop watching, it grows roots again. Back in my office, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The Dreamflower logo glowed across the screen, bright and steady. My father's name still sat beneath it, Robert Lane and Daughters. I traced the words with my fingertip. The and Daughters used to mean both of us. Now it meant only me. The lavender box still sat to my right, faintly fragrant, quietly mocking. I thought about opening it just once to see if there was a message inside, or perhaps a threat. But then I remembered the last words Megan ever said to me. You think you've won, but you'll always be looking over your shoulder. She was right, I am. I closed the laptop, turned off the lights, and stood by the window overlooking the city. Below, taxis passed, lights flashing like tiny confessions moving through the night. In the reflection of the glass, I saw myself older, steadier, a little lonelier, and whispered, Dreamflower will never fall again. Not from the outside, not from the inside. Then I glanced once more at the lavender box, still sealed, and added quietly, but some ghosts don't stay buried. They bloom.